In this video, I'll demonstrate how I polish a katana blade, including what I do to make the hamon as bright and beautiful as possible. I begin with the foundation polishing, which is where I take the freshly quenched and tempered sword and work it against a coarse stone. The purpose of this stage is not so much to polish as to refine the contours of the blade, to perfect its shape. Once the contours have been perfected, the cutting edge is sharpened for the first time. With each step of the polishing, the edge gets sharper and sharper, and by the end of the process it will be ridiculously sharp. But even after this first step, the cutting edge is extremely sharp, and I'll have to take great care not to cut myself from here on out as I handle the blade. Since it's difficult to find Japanese water stones in all the variety of grits I'd like to use, I've created this device, which allows me to polish with wet-dry sandpaper lubricated with 3-in-1 oil. The white cylinder to which the sandpaper is attached is made of high-density polyethylene plastic, which is the same material kitchen cutting boards are made of. I use a grit of sandpaper slightly less coarse than the foundation polishing stone. The heavy cylinder can be rotated to expose fresh abrasive. After thoroughly polishing every square millimeter of the blade on the sandpaper device, I go back to polishing stones, moving up to a slightly finer grit. Then back to a finer grit of sandpaper. Then to a finer grit of waterstone. Then an even finer grit of sandpaper. And a still finer grit of waterstone. I finished the process with 1500, 2000, and 2500 grit sandpaper, which leaves the blade with a mirror finish. In order to make the hamon as bright and beautiful as possible, I etch the blade with lemon juice with a drop of dish soap in it. You can see here how etching makes the hamon more visible. I wet a cotton ball in the juice and continually rub the blade for 15 minutes. Then I rinse the blade in mildly soapy water. Then I polish the blade with Pikal metal polish to remove oxides generated during the etching. I repeat this process several times until the hamon is nice and bright. Here you can see what the hamon looks like after 4 or 5 etchings. Looks pretty good. The final step, and the one that really makes the hamon pop, is to polish the blade with a paste made with 15 micron aluminum oxide powder and 3-in-1 oil. I polish by rubbing the paste forcefully in very small strokes with my bare thumb. It takes several hours to polish the entire blade this way. And this is what the hamon looks like in ordinary light after the final step. Even in this light you can see a ton of detail. Now I wanted to take a much better picture of this blade and its hamon, one that would clearly show off all its features. Turns out this is a much more difficult task than you'd imagine. A highly polished sword is basically a mirror, and in most rooms, in most lighting, even this excellent hamon is barely visible. The reason this video is so delayed is that I've spent the past month photographing this sword trying to get the ideal picture. I've taken hundreds and hundreds of photos of this sword, to the point that I now hate both swords and cameras. Eventually, though, I figured out how to do it well enough and devised a method. This picture was taken at night, out of doors, with the sword angled slightly upward, so the thing that's reflecting off the mirror finish is the black night sky. That's why the shiny surface looks black. The lighting for this photo is a single, extremely bright white shop light placed in such a fashion that it lights up the hamon like a Christmas tree light. It took forever to figure this out. But I must confess that there is some digital magic going on here. This is not one single photo, but rather a composite of 4 photos, each taken with the light source at a different height. I've done no enhancement of the hamon whatsoever. All I've done is stitched together the appropriately illuminated piece from each of the 4 photos into a single sword, and eliminated the glare from the light source so the entire blade can be appreciated in a single image. So this is what the sword would look like under the most perfect conditions possible, reflecting nothing but a dark night sky, with magical lighting that doesn't produce any glare. And this is what the hamon actually looks like in ordinary daylight. Alright, this is how I polish katanas. In my next video, I'll show how to make habakis and other metal components for mounting, assembling, and completing the sword. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next installment.